Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am so excited to introduce today's guest to you. Stacey Altherr is a former prize-winning reporter for Newsday, a daily newspaper on Long Island, New York, and now owns and runs a cafe on Longboat Key, Florida. The cafe is the best part of her former work, she says, because you get to talk to people and they tell you their life stories. Only this time, she doesn't write it down and make it prose. She pours them coffee instead. So welcome, Stacey. Thank you for joining us from your home in Sarasota, Florida.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it really is a joy and a pleasure. I just want to share with our listeners that you and I know each other a really long time. We grew up together in Bayshore, New York, and have known each other a very long time, although thanks to social media and Facebook, in the last several years, I got to see what Stacey was up to in her life, and I thought it was so interesting that I thought it would be great to interview her. So we've reconnected and are now we're grown-ups. We're not kids anymore.
That's right. We haven't physically seen each other in, I don't know, 30-something, 40 years?
A few years, yeah. That's right. So, this podcast is about career transition, other kinds of life transitions that people make in order to go from a place of maybe less satisfaction to a place of greater satisfaction. So, and I know we've talked before about this, that actually you really liked what you were doing before you left Newsday. But tell us more about your path and what fulfillment and meaning are for you in the work that you're doing.
Sure. Well, to start it, I was out of college and looking for a job. And through a temp agency, I was working for them while I was looking for a permanent job. They offered me a 2-week stint at Newsday answering telephones. And that's how I started there. It was 1986. And a funny story is that the first day I was overwhelmed by being in a newsroom. It was really loud and a lot of people screaming and even some cursing in those days and just grouchy people around me and barking orders at me. So at the end of the day, I went over to the manager of the clerks and I said, "Maureen, thank you so much for this opportunity, but I really don't think this is for me." She looked me in the eye and she said, "Come back tomorrow." And for some odd reason, I did. So I ended up staying for 30 years. And I worked my way up from answering telephones and clerking and working in the photo department, later doing research for all of Newsday's very big projects. They're, multi-day projects. And then settling in as a reporter where I covered government and features and all of their, all types of stories for them. And it was a very, very fulfilling career. But as time wore on, I was a single woman, so I could really dedicate a lot of my life to my career, which I loved. And I was always available and always happy to do whatever they needed. But I adopted a child in 2009, and it became harder. And one of the things that I've learned in life is that, it's okay to struggle for a little while if there's a goal at the end, but if you're struggling and you don't really see a goal, it's time to move on, and it's okay to move on. So I left Newsday and I freelanced for a while from my perch on Long Island, was still living there. And I really just felt this need to move to warmer climates. And I always loved Florida. So I asked my son, who was heading into high school, what he thought about us selling the house and moving. And we decided to do it with the understanding that if we were miserable, we'd come back. And that's the other thing about transitions. They don't always have to be forever. You can you can try things out and that's okay. So
I love hearing that part of your story, because I think that, some people, they get established in a career as you did. And while, you became a parent during that time, and it became more challenging to balance the demands of your job with having a family. It's just fascinating to hear you say, you can try something, and if it doesn't work out, you can go back to it, because I think that's what holds some people back. So what made you think that you could go back? Did you think, when you left Newsday, did they say, you always have a job with us? Or, another question about that is, when you moved to Florida, did you think you were going to continue as a journalist, or did you think you were going to do something else?
yeah, well, the first question, they did not say there's an open door policy and come back anytime. But I knew that I could move back to New York and still be a journalist, because there were so many other papers and even websites now that really, is a real career path now. So I felt comfortable that I could move back to, my hometowns and reestablish myself. I knew, and this is important too. I was realistic to know that I wasn't going to be able to buy the the type of house I was selling, that I would have to settle for something smaller. But I just felt like it was worth it, that the how big my house was started to matter less and less as the years went on. And so I was okay with that. I thought, okay, I have to come back, we just buy a smaller house and, it'll be fine. The other question, and what was it again? I'm sorry, you
That's
said.
okay. I was curious, as you decided to move to a warmer climate and your son was agreeable to that, were you just simply moving to a warmer climate, or were you envisioning, other changes like in your work life or other things? I know that's eventually what happened, but
Yeah.
I'm curious. So, first of all, you made, a significant move, a geographic move, and you moved down there without a job per se, although I know you were doing some freelancing. And as a single parent, I could imagine some people listening and thinking, wow, that takes a lot of guts.
Yeah. I didn't have a real path for a career here. I was moving here hoping to reestablish myself somehow in some other way, knowing that I could always freelance and earn, some sort of living doing that. So I think I knew that I could rely on that, but I moved down here wanting to change, wanting a change. So
a change in work too.
In work too. And
Yeah.
Everything. I just was ready for it.
Yeah.
Ready to just take a little break.
Yeah.
So I didn't move down here and feel like I had to find a job within a month. I had a couple of months. Luckily, I was fortunate. Saved enough for that. So
I see. So you had some savings. We're not trying to pry into your finances here,
yeah,
but
no, sure.
I think that's a big key for a lot of people who start to entertain the idea of a change, especially when you have a child and people are thinking about things like, how am I going to pay for college, or, all those things. So it sounds like you had sort of a blend between, you had a little bit of a nest egg and some security. And it sounded like there was kind of this sort of underlying, kind of just groundedness or confidence that whatever needed to be taken care of, you'd be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I think I just thought, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll move back. And New York, there's certainly plenty of opportunities there. Yeah, I think I was just, and I did plan my escape. It wasn't as if I just woke up one day and said, okay, sell the house, let's go.
Yeah, you did it you were planning for quite a while. Tell us more about that process.
I think it was probably almost 3 years before I finally moved that I got it in my head that I wanted to start a plan to move. A lot of it had to do with the commute and the weather. I had this one particularly bad commute. It was 6 hours home for less than an hour drive. It was a really white knuckle experience. And I just remember saying to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't think it's necessary to take my life in my hands to get to a job and back. And, it was about then that I said, okay, start thinking how to do this. And that's when I started saving some money, really paying attention to the real estate values in my neighborhood and how much I could get. And, would it be worth it to sell or should I rent? All those things that you kind of, think about when you're making a change. So not overnight, that's for sure.
No, definitely not overnight. And when you started having that thought, you had that, that tough commute that one night. And I'm sure it wasn't the only time you had that.
No.
So you started saving money and you looked at real estate values. Did you know where you were going to at that point? Or were you just sort of saying, okay, I'm getting ready for a change, a move, but I'm not sure exactly where yet?
The funny thing was I was really set to move to the East Coast. I live on the West Coast here in Sarasota, and my friends are on the East Coast. And I went down and visited them and looked at homes and looked at the school. And it was lovely. I loved it over there. But my sister sort of impulsively bought a winter home in Naples. And when I say impulsively, I just mean they came down for a vacation and loved it and decided to buy this winter home. And she said to me, Stacey, you should really look on the West Coast. It's so beautiful. We don't normally go there on vacation. We're normally on the East Coast. Just take a look at it. Growing up on Long Island, we love the Atlantic Ocean. So I couldn't imagine not being on the ocean. But when I came here for a visit, I just fell in love with it. And, I'm a researcher just by nature and by trade. So I started looking at all the school districts, which are the good ones, calling people that I knew that lived in, a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. I actually had a former colleague that had moved to Sarasota. So I gave him a call and they sent me a bunch of information. And so I was wrestling between the two and I just decided here was better. I felt like it was a better fit for my son too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you did a lot of thorough research. So some keys to making this transition was what I would say was sort of a groundedness or a kind of a faith in yourself that you could make this happen. You really wanted it. And then you engaged in a process of both planning and researching and figuring out where were the best schools, what was going to be the best fit for your son. It sounded like you were pretty flexible. And what I didn't know is that your sister was already buying a place down there too. So you had friends and family somewhere in the area as well, which I would imagine was also part of it.
Yes, that helped, knowing she was 2 hours, at least for half the year. People are so welcoming too. Once I came down here to look at the schools with my son, we met people on the tour of the school and we all just started, emailing and calling each other and talking to one another. And, we all moved down within the same period of time. And, I think one thing, you have to be open when you make these transitions. You just have to be open to, you have to plan and you have to make sure, you're taking care of business, so to speak. But you also have to be open to what may happen. And I think when I was wrestling between Melbourne and Sarasota, one of the things that really helped was that, I kept in touch with these parents over the next few months and we talked, we all gathered information and shared it to one another. We made sure our kids talked through Snapchat and whatever, Instagram, or and so they had a little community too, because it's especially for a kid going into high school.
Oh, so, yeah.
There was a lot of that. So I really believe in the faith of humanity when you are making these changes, to yourself up.
So really connecting with people and maintaining those connections and generating those relationships in a way where by the time you move there, it sounds like you already had some people to connect with who you had something in common with. You all had kids, and it's interesting. I think when we think about making a transition as significant as you made, and I'm not sure that we think about all the different ways that you can really support the process while you're in the process of making the change. I think we often think about how we get from point A to point Z. And there's something daunting about such a dramatic change. And yet what you're painting here is a picture of, several layers and levels of decision-making, research, engaging in relationships. And then, over a 3-year period, you then actually physically moved. And then what happened?
Yeah. So we were here, and I took a few months to just relax. Probably, Tammy, for the first time in my life since I was about 14.
Yeah.
My first job. So I just kind of relaxed and enjoyed my new surroundings, and also helped my son get settled in. That was really important to me. So right away, he went into football, and right away, I signed him up for 2 summer camps where he learned how to, not surfing, something else, skimboarding. And, just tried to get him around kids right away. And took those months to relax. And again, I was lucky I could do that, and then I started to try to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah. So how did you do that?
Well, it's so funny. I can remember being in my 20s and talking to my friend about how I wanted to open a tea shop. And this was even before tea shops were a big deal, or before we knew about Starbucks. And so it was kind of always something. It was almost even like a joke among my friends that knew me while I was in my career, which is a very fast-paced career. You work a lot of hours. You work, closely with people. And I would always say, when I leave this, I'm going to open a coffee shop and pour coffee for people. And when I moved here, that was really not my intent to buy a business. I had never owned a business. So I
Really?
Yeah.
What was your intent?
I think my intent was to keep on freelancing and to see if I could get a job. A lot of journalists transition very well career-wise into public relations. And I thought, well, that's probably what I'll do. That's what everybody does.
Mm.
But I was on a website and I was just kind of fooling around. And when you're on the internet and you click on something else and it leads you here and there and everywhere. And it led me to this site of businesses for sale. And I noticed this cafe on Longboat Key, which is about a half hour from here. Beautiful, beautiful, upscale, wealthy community, beach community. And the pictures were just so adorable. And I thought, oh my goodness, like this is really what I always thought about,
Wow.
and never possible. And here it is. So I went to look at it.
Just like that.
Yeah. I just called, I just emailed, I just clicked on the link and emailed the owner, and they said, yeah, come on by and see it. So I did, no obligation, just go look at it. And I did. And I looked at my finances, and it was a risk, and we have red tide down here. So it's been an issue. I mean, it was a risk to do it. But I just decided that, life was too short not to do things and try things that you really want to do. So I decided to do it. And I put all my efforts into it. And the other thing I'll tell you about a transition for people that go from one thing to another.
Yeah.
You take your skills with you. And that's what I've learned. My people skills, my interpersonal skills that I learned as a reporter, all those skills that you have, you take with you. So even though you're making a huge transition, you're still you, and you get to use those skills in your new, in your new life.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I did. I bought the place. It's a very small cafe, so it's extremely manageable.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate that the cook stayed on with me, and she's still with me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's a lifesaver.
That's amazing. Well, that's a testament to your interpersonal skills, I'm sure. So, you went from working for a large, at least I think of it as a large newspaper, as a journalist, always on the spot when a story was happening. And now you're a business owner. So interpersonal skills are great, but how do you run a business when you haven't done that before?
Yeah, well, there have been bumps and bruises, believe me. There have been. One of my skills that I took with me was research. And so I immediately linked in on Facebook with other restaurateurs. There's an actual site, a page. and just asked a lot of questions. And anytime I would talk to any suppliers that came in, I would ask them a lot of questions. Like, what do other restaurants get? How did they handle their espressos? Or, just whatever question came up. And again, that's a skill that I learned as a reporter. Always ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask a lot of questions,
Yeah, and dig deeper.
Yeah. Just keep asking until you know the answer. And so that's what I did. There was definitely some kinks in the beginning. I lost my servers. It was high season. They walked out the day after I bought the place. So, I mean, there was.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah. So that was really hard.
Well, that certainly wasn't due to your interpersonal skills if they walked out the day you bought it.
No, they were just mad and they just walked out. It was pretty kind of crazy. I really told them to stay, and they said, no, we were leaving anyway. They were friends. And so they left. In the long run, it was better off. But
yeah,
at the moment, I was devastated. But we made it through. And my son works with me.
Oh, really?
He works one day a week with me. He works on Sundays with me. And he was working at that point. It was spring break and he was working every day with me. And that's another lovely thing that came from this, that, he gets to see this business growing and he gets to see both the rewards and the pain. He gets to see me worried about something or, exhausted because I'm working 6 days a week or, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Sees the rewards, he's proud of it. He's proud of the business. So that's really a lovely part of it.
That's nice to hear. I think this is something that I discuss with my clients on a regular basis, at least those who have children. And that is that, as part of sort of my philosophy of hoping that people will be happy at work or love their work is that, your children do see you as a role model for what going to work looks like. Yeah. And so if you're unhappy at work or you see, your work is something that you just leave at the door at the end of the day and come home feeling kind of grumpy about it, that's the message the kids are going to get about what going to work looks like.
Yes.
So what an amazing opportunity for both of you and your son to share this and for him to see the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the highs, the lows of running a business. And the fact that he takes pride in it is just wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a big thing in our lives, and it's been a wonderful thing.
Yeah. What would you say if you were able to point to one or two really key things that have gotten you through all these aspects of the transition, what would you point to as being the real strongholds for you?
I've been thinking about that. I think the most important thing is to really know yourself. You are someone who really, you don't love your job, but it's a good paying job and you have medical benefits and you have your 401k and you're okay with that. You're okay with the work not being fulfilling because it allows you to have things in your personal life that you really want and it pays for those things. Then transitions would be really hard, I would think. But if you can say to yourself, you know what, I really don't care about the 4-bedroom colonial on a 3-acre property. If you can say that, if you can say, I'm okay if we have to change our lifestyle because this is more important, then the transition will be much easier. And that's what I found. I've just, as a person, just grown more, how can I put it, less interested in material things and more interested in my own personal growth.
So that's really key, that you really have to, and this isn't, not everybody has this in their lives, but I think the people who I'm trying to speak to through this podcast are people who might hesitate to make a change, even though they might be a whole lot happier because they're afraid of, the financial implications or other areas where they already feel secure. And yet they're missing out.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to decide the type of person you are. I have friends and family who could never do this because the stability of their job is so important to them. And I get that. I was at my job for 30 years, so I understand stability. But if you're willing, and look, you could go into you can transition to a job where you make 3 times as much. That happens to people.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and have even more fulfillment in both areas. But you also have to be ready to say, okay, I'm okay with, tightening the belt a little bit and having less material things, less trips to Disney, and, put it towards this business.
Yeah. Wonderful. So as you're going forward now, looking ahead, it's clear that you are very happy with the decisions that you've made. What remains important to you today as you go forward, and what are your plans?
Well, first is to make the cafe even more of a success. So to work really hard to make it successful. So it will bring me, a little more financial stability, or even if I sell it, that's possible too, that in a few years I'll want to sell it. I really made up my mind yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't want to give up on my writing. I also write some freelance stories still. I keep my hand in my writing. And so I write, for certain newspapers. And so I still do that. And I want to continue to do that, and maybe even do more of that once I'm more settled. I've only had the cafe 2 years, so it still feels brand new to me.
Yeah.
So still working a lot of hours, and not, I'm there every day it's open. So
yeah.
Hoping to maybe do less of, just kind of give myself a little more of a break there, and, still write some more. So, yeah. I think
so tell our listeners, if they happen to be in the Sarasota, Longboat Key part of that part of the West Coast of Florida, how can they find you and say a personal hello?
Oh, sure. I would love that. So we're located on Longboat Key, which is, there's really only one main street. It's called Gulf of Mexico Drive. And we are across the street from the Diplomat Hotel, which is kind of a landmark. It's a turquoise hotel on the Gulf. Beautiful place. And we're right across the street in the same parking lot as Swim City. And we're called simply Suzanne's Cafe. Even though my name is Stacey, I kept the name of the original owner because it had been through a lot of it had been through a lot of different name changes, and I was afraid to change it.
Well, and I have to add to that by saying, after hearing your story and all the things that you did to make this happen, there is nothing simple about Stacey. So, so I wish you only the best going forward. I myself plan on visiting you there. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
You're open for breakfast and lunch, is that right?
Yes, breakfast and lunch, 8 to 2.
All right, 8 to 2, Simply Suzanne's Cafe in Longboat Key. Well, Stacey, this has been such a joy and a thrill to connect with somebody who I share such deep roots with, and to see what you've done to, move your life forward, and how happy you've been through the transitions. It's a little different, your story, than some of the others in that I'm working with, that you were actually pretty happy when you made your transition. And it's kind of an interesting perspective in terms of making a change, or recommending that don't wait till you're miserable to make a change. Make a change while you're still feeling good, right?
Yeah, that too. Yeah. And it's okay to, make a change. Even if, you've had a wonderful career, it's okay to make a change to do something else, like sport.
Well, thanks again, Stacey, and we'll be talking again soon, I hope.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Stacey Altherr. It was so much fun to speak with her after all these years and learn about her geographic and professional journey. It was great to know how happy she has been in life. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 004. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Stacey, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And please subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? Oh, that's great. I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your fulfillment and satisfaction in work or other meaningful activities in your life. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows? Maybe you'll be a guest on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.